Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws Podcast with East Forest. I'm East Forest, and I'm coming to you today with an episode with Nicole Sachs. I think you're going to like this. She was introduced to me by Rachel, my friend Rachel, who used to be in my management, and she knew that I was tapped into this book by Dr. Sarno called Healing Back Pain Now. And it's something that came into my life and had a really profound impact about a time in my life that I'll talk about in this episode when I had some pain in my body and I couldn't figure out what was going on or what was causing the pain. And a doctor told me it was stress, so to speak, and I didn't believe him. And I went to all these other doctors, and eventually I came full circle and had to realize the psycho-spiritual element that was causing my pain. And that still does when it comes up. And that was pretty profound for me. It's pretty life-changing to recognize how our psychology and our beliefs can affect our bodies and our health, essentially. So that seems like, I guess, something we kind of know and is bandied about in sort of conscious circles, conchy circles, as some people say. But it isn't always known. You know what I mean? You don't always know it yourself. And so Nicole is someone who worked and studied with Dr. Sarno and then has continued his work and developed it on her own. And I thought it'd be a great chance to just ask questions and introduce this work to you. So, take it for what you want. It's meaningful to me, but I'm sure for some of you it's going to perk up some bullshit meter to be like, is that true? And I just say, well, in some ways, it's true if you want it to be true, in a way, right? That's kind of the point. It's as true as you choose it to be. But for a lot of people, there's a lot of truth in it. And I can just speak from my own experience. That was definitely true. So I'm sure that you'll enjoy this episode. I just want to give you a heads up that this Saturday, July 18th, I'm doing another East Forest virtual ceremony online. So I decided to pull the trigger on that and move forward. And I hope it's of service to you guys. I hope it's always wonderful to come together all at the same time around the world. And that'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, July 18th here in the U.S. But it's amazing. It's amazing to play in that long-form way and see what you guys do with it, how you're able to use that as a tool to dive in. So what makes these ceremonies different than, say, a typical performance or even any other live stream, quote-unquote, concert, is that I don't view these as concerts per se. So one, I'm not performing my, quote, songs. I'm not playing stuff off the records I've released. What I'm trying to do and aiming to do is to improvise and to be open in the moment to what wants to flow through. So for me, it's a very different experience of kind of having all the things set up, the instruments, and then just doing my absolute best to ride the waves that come and go of creativity and inspiration and going in and out of my own thought process and releasing. And we go on that journey together. And that's what these medicine journeys are. So, my intention is to do one this Saturday, July 18th. And we're also doing an East Forest Council, which we did this twice before. This will be before and after the event. It's like a private Zoom group. It's a very small group, so it's limited numbers. If you want to join, you can do that at eastforest.org. Scroll down there on the page or over on the tour page. There's also a link that has the info about the live stream. And East Forest Council is we'll get together with me on Zoom and we'll gather in community, provide tips, listen to each other, share stories. So it's about meeting one another and preparing and maximizing the experience of the ceremony, both before and after. So we'll be meeting on the evening of Friday the 17th and the late morning of Sunday the 19th. Those are all on Zoom, and it's on a sliding scale. If you'd like to join, I appreciate all the support you're able to give. Anyone who gives over $75 will also receive a high-resolution flash drive of the Music for Mushrooms, a soundtrack for the Psychedelic Practitioner album. That is a new merch item that's on the eastforest.org web shop. And we'll send one of those out to you if you want to make one of the the sliding scale that's on a little bit on the higher side. We'd be happy to sweeten the pot by sending that out to you. So check that out. Everything you need to know about the ceremony itself and the council is at eastforest.org. It will be streaming on YouTube, so you can watch it at youtube.com/eastforestmusic, all one word, East Forest Music. And thanks for sharing it with your friends and stuff so we can all come together. There's something powerful when we're all sort of putting our attention in one place at one time. I think I'll leave it up on YouTube for a couple weeks afterwards. So if you do miss it, you'll be able to at least see it or participate in it again or share it with friends. But it will not stay up for all time and eternity because these are meant to be live happenings. So I hope to see you then. Hey, don't forget to give this podcast a review, please. 5 stars is always great on iTunes podcasts, and you can also share it with your friends and on social media. All that is a great way to show support and send us any messages of support or to say hello or guest suggestions at team@eastforest.org. Also on July 17th, I'm releasing a new track with an artist named Born Eye, and he is a hip-hop artist and also a meditation teacher in Washington, D.C., and we got connected, and he did this awesome rendition of a song of his called I Can't Breathe that was written for Eric Garner's The Happening of his death years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and sadly, it's very prescient now. It's almost like he wrote this, when George Floyd's killing happened. It's crazy. It's like it's about the same thing. So I heard him doing it over singing bowls on Instagram. Someone had sent me a link, and I was like, wow, I've never heard rapping over singing bowls, and it was also incredible. And Born Eye and I got on the old video chat, and he's a really sweet guy, really awesome, and he was gracious enough to let me mess around with the track and essentially remix it. So I added instrumentation and created a mix with him, and that's coming out on July 17th on all streaming platforms. And we thank you for checking that out. You can pre-save it. You can follow East Forest on Spotify, for instance, and you will get the track in your release radar. I think you'll get it before the public, maybe, but it'll be on all streaming services on Friday the 17th. So that's a track with Born Eye called the East Forest remix of I Can't Breathe. Coolness. So, I just got back from a real quick backpacking trip with Rada. We went up into the Idaho mountains, which is always nice to get up into the wilderness. I was just reminded about how humbling it is just to stand around the infinitude of the life that is on this planet. Everything from the bacteria to the blades of grass to the insects, except the mosquitoes, those suck. And the trees and the clouds and the vistas, and just to be in places that are still wild. It's very humbling. And I feel it's important, at least for me, and I know for all of us, because we're all the same thing that I am, which is a human being. And we are nature personified, walking and talking. So if you can, get out there, keep walking your walk. But for now, let's get into this conversation. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I'm sure it's educational with Nicole Sachs. I found you. There's the simple answer and then the long answer. But the simple answer is someone sent me what you're up to.
Okay.
Rachel, who I used to work with. And she sent that to me because she knew that I had recommended to her Dr. Sarno's book years ago. Because I had my own personal experience where that rang really true for me. And I had to go through this very long, convoluted journey to believe it. And
As do we all. Yeah.
It was terrible. And so anyway, now it's something that's deeply a part of my life. And people might not know what we're talking about yet. And so that's why I'm interested in the subject. And I haven't met anyone else who was working with it in such an intimate way as you are. And so I thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to not only illuminate other people, but it's a little self-serving for myself because It's present in my life.
Yeah.
And I can't say I, quote, understand it, but I know it in my body in a way.
Got it. Yes. I totally understand that.
Yeah. So just let's start. And I think a great way would just be to say thank you for joining us. I think what would be helpful for people is if you could just give a brief background on who you are and some of the work that you're up to before we dive in.
Got it. Okay. So my name is Nicole Sachs. I'm a psychotherapist by trade and an author and a mom and a speaker and a podcaster and whatever else I am. So the way I got into this, I always say I came by this honestly. I was 19 when I was diagnosed with a spinal condition called acute degenerative spondylolisthesis, which
Wow.
is a big mouthful. And it is an abnormality of the lower spine. The way I found out that I had this is my back went out. That's the best way to describe it. Freshman year of college, it was an acute pain incident. I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I couldn't function. My parents had to literally come to school and like carry me out of there and bring me back home. And I underwent all the tests, X-rays, MRIs, consults with orthopedic surgeons. And it was determined that I had this incredibly severe abnormality in my lower spine, which includes one of my vertebrae is actually totally shattered and replaced with scar tissue. And then I have stress fractures above and below. And then I have this thing called spondylolisthesis, which is basically every orthopedic surgeon who has ever seen my MRI goes pale. It's a bad scene, apparently.
Wow. Okay.
So, of course, any thinking person would say that's why I had back pain, right? I have this abnormality and nobody knew about it till I was 19. But now I'm getting all these very extreme, limiting life sort of guardrails on my life. So with this diagnosis came no exercise, no sports, no travel, very specific sleeping positions. Like unless I was fetal, I had to have my legs elevated to 2 feet. It was hardcore, especially for a teenager, and then ultimately they said the likelihood that I would have a biological child would be slim to none because what I was doing, what they basically said is I was on a limited time schedule for how long I could live before I had spinal fusion surgery. And spinal fusion surgery at the time, this is 1990, was 6 weeks in a body cast and limited mobility for life. So they didn't want to do that 1 second before they had to. But if I wasn't super careful, I could put myself into the state that it would be emergency surgery. So this was the diagnosis and basically the life plan that I was given at that age. And, call it spiritual, call it what you will. There was something in me that knew this wasn't going to be my fate, but I had no idea why or how. I just kind of heard what they said. And I certainly lived a life of fear and I lived a life in chronic pain. But I was on steroids and I was on muscle relaxers and some pain medication at that time. Thank God, not opioids. And I was able to return to school and live my life and finish my degree. And so I was living my life, but there was always this sort of dark cloud in the background that any second now this could blow.
Right.
And when it did, it would be really dire for me. But like I said, in tandem with that, there was this deep knowing that something else was coming for me. I literally had no idea what, but I just knew it wasn't my fate to be one of these people who never lived a full life and never had kids. I don't know.
That's pretty incredible because I would think initially when you hear that kind of news, what you're going to be going through is incredible emotional stress.
And perhaps that was just denial. Like perhaps I was utilizing the incredible defense mechanism of denial where I was young and I was like, I can't deal with that right now. So I didn't. So, call it what you will. There was a calmness. It was almost like the eye of the hurricane living within me. It's sort of a calmness within me in my center that said, maybe this isn't my fate. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And when I was so I lived my life. I lived in New York City for several years, and then I decided to go to graduate school. And I was it was just after my first year of graduate school, and my mother had come upon the work of Dr. John Sarno through seeing it in the media. And she called me very excited and said, I think I might know what's wrong with you. And she said, you have to go buy this book, Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And I purchased the book, and now I'm in my mid-20s. So I'm a little bit more mature, but not incredibly so, but enough to know that when I saw Sarno's theory, and I'll just say it in a nutshell, what he believed and believes is that we may have abnormalities. We may have bulging discs and spondylolisthesis and all sorts of diagnoses, which are real because they are being expressed through our physical body. But the genesis of most human pain is in the world of the brain and the nervous system protecting us from our repressed emotions. So that's the in the nutshell Sarno's theory. And I got that. And I got that. And he said, when you're feeling back pain, what you're really feeling is really angry. And your rage, that is very inconvenient for human beings to feel, is bubbling up. And it is more dangerous in your brain's perception to feel your rage than to feel your pain. So your brain and your nervous system, in a protective function, choose your pain. So I got it. I got that much. And through getting that, I made a decision that I was fine and that my back was a normal abnormality. And it took me through, it coasted me through a lot of my life. I finished graduate school. I got married. I had 2 children. I exercised till the day they were born. And I was like, I'm solved. I'm done. Yay me. I figured it out. And then I had the ultimate downfall, which is when my son was 10 months old, he was toddling around in a bit of a walker, those baby walkers. And I decided I wanted to move it from one level of my deck to the driveway. It was 2 steps. And I leaned over this massive thing and with this 20-pound baby in it, and I picked it up. And it felt like a hot knife was dragging through my lower back. And this is where all the Sarno theory and the mind-body stuff went out the window. And I was in total shame. And I had decided that I had done it. I had tempted fate and I lost. And now I'm really broken. And so this is the beginning of my real spiritual awakening, because what I realized in that year of chronic pain that ensued after that incident was that I understood Sarno's theory, but I never did the work. It's kind of like if you ever see the movie Poltergeist, they moved the gravestones, but they never took out the bodies. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but it's like there was darkness underneath that I was too young and too immature, and I just wanted to go on with my life. And although I understood Sarno's theory, I never did the deep emotional work, and it left me vulnerable to this relapse of chronic pain. So in that darkness, I hit a different kind of bottom. I hit a more mature, I was probably like 30. And I just said, now I have to figure out what is this really about? And that's when I actually went into New York. At the time Sarno was still practicing. I saw him as a patient, and he explained to me really what this was that it was a deep excavation to bring these repressed emotions from the unconscious realm to the conscious realm. And that's when I started the work. I'm not going to go on forever because I know that otherwise this becomes a monologue, but that's when I started the work that brought me into my practice and my teachings. That was really the genesis of it.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sure you've told that story many times, and it's fascinating. Now, I wanted to interject because I know the question that would probably come up first for people. And they're probably a little confused because they're thinking but you started saying you looked at the x-rays, you saw all these physical things wrong with your back, and people are like, that's physics, it causes pain, you had pain. And then somehow maybe they're thinking there was an understanding that the pain, yes, pain is perceived by the brain and then transmitted to, that's how we perceive pain. But maybe they're thinking it's more like you were able to overcome some kind of neural pathway just by believing differently. And perhaps people are like, yeah, but it doesn't change the fact that you were injured and there was pain. So, I mean, what's the difference here in what you're saying?
So the difference comes with a very bold rethinking of what we've always known. So when I speak to groups of people, oftentimes I carry an Etch-a-Sketch. And I, hopefully everybody is over the age of 12 has actually heard of an Etch-a-Sketch. And I say
they're retro. It's cool. People know what those are.
Super cool. They're back. They're the original iPad. And I say to people, here's an Etch-a-Sketch. And if I were to actually be able to use this thing and make art and explain and depict a picture of what it means to be healthy, what it means to be sick, what it means to be injured, what it means to be diagnosed. And then, of course, broader things, what it means to be someone's daughter, what it means to be in love, what it means to be worthy. There are pictures that come to our mind for every one of these concepts. And if I am taking your Etch-a-Sketch with that picture on it, So in terms of what you just described, it would be an Etch-a-Sketch of what it means to have a physical abnormality and what that causes to happen in my body in terms of pain. If I were to take my little knobs and paint on your picture, I might convince you a little bit. But if you're looking to save your own life, which when I'm speaking to groups of people, most people are, I shake it. I shake the shit out of it and I say, I need you to shake your Etch-a-Sketch because I need a blank screen. Because if I'm really going to have an impact, if I'm going to show you what I have seen thousands and thousands of people do for their lives around the world in the 20 years I've been doing this, you're going to need to come from a place of total openness. Because what you asked just now, Krishna, is something that will block people from healing because it's the old paradigm of what it means to be broken. That abnormality in my spine, similar to bulging discs, does not cause pain and never did and never has for anyone. And I know this because I've been doing it for so many years and also piggybacking on the millions of people that have done Sarno's work, that it is a mistake that we have ever thought that. And because it was a mistake, we have been very logically pairing for years different forms of physical abnormalities with different forms of pain. And the brain is so suggestible that it is a willing partner in that because the brain is simply looking to protect us from the greater predator. And the greater predator is our repressed emotional world that causes us to be in a sustained fight or flight reaction, which of course causes very physical things like extra cortisol and extra adrenaline and causing us to shut down other things like digestion and circulation and the things that we need to function healthily. So it really is a rethinking of many of the things that we have come to know as true.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Sarno, it's been a few years since I read that book, is saying, he calls it TMS, I believe, this kind of pain, and that kind of pain, it's not all pain. He's like, he finds this in many instances, a lot of back pain. I think he mentions a lot of sciatica, headaches, prostatitis, different kinds of pain that he found through his experience. It comes up the most, but that sometimes, like most, I guess, obviously, you take a knife and you cut your arm, it hurts. That's probably what caused the pain, is when you cut your arm. Or are you saying, do you agree? Is that what he's saying? Am I correct in that?
What he's saying is that the body is a miracle, as we all know, and it will heal itself. And so for every injury, people have said that to me. So Nicole, you're telling me if I drop a hammer on my foot that it's, I can journal it away. And I say, of course not. Anything that is injured in us will heal. So the femur, which is the largest bone in the body, if broken in half and set correctly, will heal in 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, you should no longer feel any pain, probably even before that, from that kind of a break. And there's all sorts of things. We get into car accidents. We get into all the body can be bumped and bruised in many ways. There is a healing time. I don't deny the Western medical model completely. I think that there are plenty of amazing things that it brings, and we need that input for us to heal. But what people are often saying to me is, I blew out my knee in 4th grade or 7th grade, and I'm 32 and I just have a bad knee. And, no, that's actually not true, because as soon as the actual human time frame to heal is completed, almost always anything chronic is because of this process I'm explaining, which is the brain and the nervous system perceiving this pain syndrome, whatever you have, to be a safer option. Human beings need something to focus on. We need this illusion of control, and it puts us in a safer space. And I think another thing that people need to hear in terms of what you said before, nothing that we're saying today is going to make complete sense to anyone, because even the greatest doctors and the greatest researchers do not understand the human brain. 5-7%, whatever percent we're at in 2020, that people understand the human brain. The human brain is a miracle. A woman can lift a car off her baby with the use of adrenaline, but I can't walk into my parking lot right now and decide to lift a car. We are capable of incredible things, but we're also capable of things that are hurting us in terms of our brain's misguided need to protect us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hope you understand that, like, my sort of inquisitive pushing back is really just to...
Totally.
I have total respect for the work, but
I
think that's part of what makes this a valuable conversation, especially for 100%. An introductory. Now, for myself, the kind of pain I was experiencing. It happened twice that I was really aware of it. And one of them was also a back thing where I kind of was, quote, I had this story in my head that if I slept on a particular kind of mattress, it would throw out my back. And I had these experiences when I was on tour where one time I literally was on the floor. I couldn't move,
Yeah. I've been there.
Right. And that had not happened to me in life. But I was just convinced it's like, well, it's, must have been a physical position and a strained muscle. And now it's spasming and it's like an age thing, whatever it is. And then after I read this book, I was being inquisitive in my mind and thinking, okay, when that happens again, what if I approach this differently? And I just tell myself, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. And whatever the thing is that it's trying to distract me from, I'm gonna try and look at that. But I'm okay. I'm safe, and I will look at that, and I'm okay. And there's nothing wrong with my back, and I can continue with my life. And I haven't had that kind of pain since then. I wouldn't say that's like definitive, but I really haven't. And when it comes up in a small way, I go through that sort of mantra, and it kind of just goes away over time. I can feel it. Other kinds of pain come up with emotional memory, like when conversations come up. And then I can go through this internal dialogue with myself about recognizing it, acknowledging it, and saying, it's okay, I'm attentive to this, and I can watch it go away over the next few hours. That, to me, once I started seeing that, I was like, oh my God, all right. After all the specialists were like, nothing's wrong with you, I still didn't believe it. But then I read that book, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. And then I watched it all start to happen. And so for me, I couldn't deny that.
So let me go ahead. Do you want to finish? Because I have so much to say about that.
No, I'll go to part two after. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Okay, so I want to tell you, Krishna, what happened in your body that day, because I think this is really helpful. Okay, so each of us, I want you to picture like a science beaker, a clear science beaker within your body that maybe originates in your pelvic area and goes up to your chest. So it's a large container within us, and that is our reservoir. Dr. Sarno called it the reservoir of rage, but I've expanded that to be the reservoir of rage, shame, grief, trauma, sadness, all the things that as human beings we have to endure.
Right.
So we have a childhood. Oftentimes in childhood, we don't feel like we have a voice. The very nature of childhood means we don't have a voice. Someone else is in charge of us and we don't get to make our own decisions. But there's a lot of rage that comes up. And then, of course, that's only in a happy childhood or just the rage of being powerlessness. Then we add on all the other damaging stuff that happens to so many children, whether it's severe like abuse or it's less severe like bullying or, people just being mean to you or having to move and leave your friends or your parents get divorced or your favorite person dies, right? So there's so many things that happen. That's childhood. And then we have daily life stressors like money or kids or, whatever it is that
pandemics.
Pandemics.
Okay, like
anxiety.
Stress, a lot of stress right now. Yeah.
Yes. Isolation, fear, health fear, personal stuff like, anything. So that's daily life. And then we have our personalities. And our personalities, oftentimes people who have any sort of susceptibility to chronic illness or pain of any kind, are people who are rather perfectionistic. You hold yourself to a high standard. It's important to you to be well liked. It's important to you that other people see you as a good person. It's oftentimes people who are susceptible to this kind of conditions are rather codependent. Like it's very important to me that you're okay. And if you're not okay, I don't know if I can feel okay in your presence. Those kind of personality characteristics are rife with this kind of stuff. So those things all contribute to this reservoir we have inside of us. And every time there is a trigger in our lives that's either bringing us back to that childhood stuff or in the daily life, making us angry, making us feel like we have feelings that we can't express, I want you to picture like a big ladle being dumped into this reservoir. Okay. And when the reservoir reaches maximum density, so it's right at the top and it's like level and it's about to spill over, there is a reflexive reaction in the brain and the nervous system, which causes a signal to be fired that there is danger, and the danger is tantamount to death. It's like you're being pursued by a lion, okay? And so something has to give. There needs to be a distraction to keep us from knowing. And this Dr. Sarno said, for all these feelings to go from the unconscious to the conscious realm, knowing how scared or rageful or angry or stuck or grieving we are, because that's not socially acceptable. And our tribe, this is really, you have to think of in terms of the primitive brain, our tribe will not love us, will not care for us, will not feed us if we express these things. So it's death. If we know these things about us, we're going to die.
But even though the trigger might be small, you're saying,
Correct.
or unconscious, so to speak.
It's the straw that breaks the camel's back, because this reservoir is being filled and filled and filled through an entire lifetime. So what happened to you, I'm saying, in this moment is you had something. Some people say, I reached for a plate and I threw out my back. I stepped on a Lego and my sciatica ran down my leg. No, you stepped on a Lego after 150 million other things that were making you so angry or so sad or so scared, And the trigger is never such a huge thing. But what happens is then the pain becomes the primary problem. And which is totally natural and human, because nobody could function with the pain you were in, laying on the floor, you can't move, right? That's it for you. You're not going to be able to feel anything about anything. You're not available to joy or to a conversation with someone. It's everything. The brain is in perfection at that moment. It has done its job, because now you're handling something that feels, believe it or not, safer than the other trigger that we've just discussed with the reservoir. A lot of the work to get well is exactly what you described, which is the belief, the self-talk, the knowing that you're well, using yourself as a science experiment. However, there's a huge piece that Sarno didn't teach enough that I feel very strongly about, which is the journal speak practice that I teach, that we can talk more about, that puts a ladle into this reservoir and dumps it out, or else you're always susceptible to being pushed into another chronic situation. And maybe next time it would be migraine headaches, or next time it would be irritable bowel disease.
A game of whack-a-mole, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So anyway, thank you for indulging me.
Let's talk about that, because when you use the word journaling, I think about cognitive behavioral therapy as a proven way to access the unconscious, create new neural pathways, rewrite systems of our brain. And so if you're saying that, because I remember in Sarno's book, it was basically about self-talk, and also then he kind of had this veiled message of but sometimes you might need to go into psychoanalysis, go deeper. And I got his point, but it didn't really have a real recipe or prescription for what to do. It was more like describing the situation. And so I'm quite interested if you're open to talking about the kind of what we can do.
Absolutely. And that's Dr. Sarno remained my mentor. So just so people know, once I did get well, I started working with him at NYU. I was already a licensed therapist. I started taking his patients in my private practice and lecturing alongside him at NYU until the day he retired. So I have the utmost respect for him. He was my mentor, in many ways a father figure for me. Having said that, he did not do a good job of explaining what to do. And people say that often with his work, that he's a genius and his theories are changing the world. But he did not give people step-by-step instructions on how to heal themselves. And that is primarily what I do in my work.
I see. So if someone wanted to, if they're curious and there's a part of their heart that's saying maybe there's something that can ring true here for me and an experience that I'm working with, what would be some steps for them to explore this as something that could be viable for them?
Right. So I would say first thing that people should know is there are 3 facets to my work. Believe, do the work, and patience and kindness for yourself. And all 3 are equally important. So believe, and I think believe is actually something, I've been just thinking about this lately. Believe is something that sometimes takes time, because it's almost like you have to marinate in the information in order to start bringing your brain and your mind and your system to willingness. Because
that's for sure. Yeah.
This is so counter to everything that we've been taught about what it means to be sick and what it means to be fixed. And so oftentimes I'll just say, if you're just being exposed to this work, maybe someone's listening to this podcast and this is their first exposure, the first thing I would say is read The Mind Body Prescription by Dr. John Sarno. It's also available in audiobook. If you're super newbie, I think sometimes your brain just needs to sit with that And just, I think an audiobook is a great way because you can lay in bed and listen to it if you're not well, or you could take a walk in nature and listen to it. There's so many ways to take that in. But in any case, that's a first step. Second step is immerse yourself in the theory. Like I have a podcast. I've been doing it for about a year and a half. So there's about, 80, 90 episodes of everyone is about this. It's either someone who had a quote unquote incurable condition who's completely pain-free, or it's me talking about theory. Every other week I interview someone, and every other week it's just me talking about theory. Immerse yourself in that. All of these resources are free. I have a YouTube channel. My whole brand is called The Cure for Chronic Pain. Look it up and just sit with it, read it, hear it, be in it. So that really helps with believe because, for especially in my interviews with people, I have people who were in wheelchairs that are running marathons. I have people that were on disability for years and years that are back at work full time, and it's a boring, typical story.
I mean, people are immediately seeing images of like the Christian fraudulent those things where they have the guy talking in his earpiece and the guy gets out of his wheelchair. And I think that's scary to them. I bet there's people thinking, there's a part of their brain trying to protect them saying, okay, hold on. You're saying that like people are sick because they choose it. Are you talking about sickness too, or just pain, by the way? Or did you start to go past pain?
Well, let me before I answer that, let me talk about the Christian thing for a second.
Let's do
it, because it's. I think you bring up really, you're a tough cookie. You bring up really important.
Well, this is a reflection of my own mind and why I had to go to all those damn doctors, and because I didn't believe.
Yes. The first thing I want to say is it's nothing like that because this is hard freaking work. It's torturous and it's so much worse than taking a pill or having a surgery. These are people who are in wheelchairs running marathons who for weeks and weeks and weeks did this emotional, sometimes months, sometimes years, depending on how much resistance they had.
And they do it, right? I mean, that's an important aspect. It's like it's really an internal process at the end of the day. It's not something someone's selling you or giving you.
No. In fact, that's why so many people resist it, because the healing, you do not choose to be ill at all. In fact, your illness, the tagline on my website is the pain is not in your head, but the solution is not in your body. And if we keep trying to alter our bodies through supplements or through diet or through surgeries or through medications, we will stay sick forever. Because this pain is not going to be solved through a physical process. There's an emotional genesis to this pain.
My God, that's a Buddhist koan. What was the first two sentences? The pain is not in your body.
The pain is not in your head.
Not in your head.
The pain is not in your head, but the solution is not in your body.
Okay. That then, we could take that to think that wellness in general, what it means to be healthy, the emotional component, psychological component, the soul component, must be paramount under this thinking.
Yes.
And that we can't have good health, as you're saying, just with exercise or the right supplements or the right exercise program. If anything,
it's impossible.
It's secondary.
Absolutely. No, I'm telling you this. And another thing that I'll say to people when they have a lot of resistance or they're going to those dark places of, is this Christian healing, is this. The most beautiful moment I ever have, I could be talking to a room of 1,000 people. I will lock eyes with as many people as I can in however many rows I can and say, the only important question I have to ask to you today is, how long would you like to suffer? This has to come from each of us. This is a bottom-up kind of healing. This is never going to come from the big pharma model or the Western medical model, or any doctor is going to tell you this. This is, I raise my hand and I say, this may be hard to believe. This may be counter to everything I've ever learned. This may be against the common thinking. But guess what? I got a whisper of knowing when I heard someone talk about this, that I might not have to live in a jail of not my own making, but of my own mind and my own body. I might not have to live in this jail anymore. And guess what? I choose not to suffer for one more day. And that's where I get that little pinprick of openness, and people start listening to read. Like, I also have a book. People could read my book. There's so many things people could read or listen to. And they say, wait a second. It's like you breathe for the first time. You say, wait a second, maybe this could work for me. I'm just telling you, this is the capital T truth. And if anyone out there is suffering, there is so much healing to be done, but it's hard work.
So it seems like this is a lot in the realm of the unconscious mind, would you say? And if that's true, like, what about the other tools out there that work with the unconscious, like hypnosis, for instance? Would that be a fast track to helping reprogram some of these thoughts, beliefs, or emotional traumas?
Well, let's start by saying this. There is a cure for chronic pain, but there is no cure for human pain, and there is no cure for the human condition. Okay, so you're talking Buddhism, we're suffering here. We're here and we're suffering. And the sooner we can just accept that and not expect this to be anything other than what it is, we become available to so much. And so there is no fast track to this. This is human life. It's like, that would be like a tantamount for me to be asking, is there a fast track to live until I die? Like, well, I don't know. Do I want one? Like, what am I going to learn in the meantime? What awakenings are going to expand me and make me into the greatest version of myself? This is a journey that may be painful, but it's, oh my God, so beautiful. And the reason there's no fast tracking is because we're talking about brain science, legitimately brain science. So the only person that could potentially ever do the work on ourselves is ourselves. If the nervous system and the brain are protecting us from our repressed unconscious emotions through the channeling of physical symptoms, then knowing the repressed emotions in its very process is what stops the pain signals from firing. That's the way this works. I teach people this journal speak process. They do the work, this very honest, unfiltered excavation of the landscape of their lives. And little by little, what happened to you in terms of your back is what starts to happen, which is one day, let's say their back hurts from the moment they wake up. One day they're in the middle of brushing their teeth and they realize they've been up for 15 minutes and their back didn't hurt yet. And they go, oh. And of course, the moment they do that, it all comes rushing in and the conditioning comes rushing in and their back might start to hurt, but they had that moment. And then maybe, a week later, they're walking downstairs to get their coffee and they're like, wait a second, it hasn't even hurt. Like that kind of thing keeps happening and happening. And so that is where the transformation starts to take place, because once the emotions are excavated, literally the pain signals stop firing. The only reason the pain signals are firing is to divert us from the emotions. But feeling them in itself is the antidote.
Right. And I've experienced that for myself pretty acutely. But have you do you have any experience with, or what about like shamanic psychedelic therapeutic work? Because that, like for instance, ayahuasca seems to have a lot to do with some pretty deep emotions or traumas that people are dealing with. And they found anecdotally that it helps them feel like they're processing something that was stuck. And whether or not that's related to pain in their body, but that maybe is let's not say faster, but valuable way of working with it.
Okay, so that I can get behind. I will hesitate till the cows come home from saying that anything should ever fast track this, because part of the beauty and the awakening is in the journey. And I know that sounds super cheesy, but it's just true.
It's a more powerful tool is what I meant to say.
But you're right. And having said that, I do believe, at least from what I don't claim to be an expert on ayahuasca or MDMA or psilocybin. I don't know about it intimately, but from what I've heard anecdotally, it's amazing. And it is definitely a great partner for this work.
Yeah, so, MDMA actually could be incredible combined with what you're doing, because they use it for PTSD in the studies with people coming back from war and trauma of all sorts and shapes and sizes. It's looking very promising.
Yeah, so I'm definitely on board with that. But like I said, I'm not an expert, so I couldn't speak on it other than from what I've heard, it sounds like it would be a really great match. Yeah.
But the name of the game, you're saying, is an ongoing process and conversation with the more tender parts of our minds and our bodies, however we're doing that.
Yeah. So let me actually say it very specifically and concretely, because sometimes I tend to get really esoteric and I forget to go down into the meat and potatoes
I know how that
of
goes.
it.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. If your brain is perceiving your repressed emotions as a greater predator than your physical pain or symptoms, and if indeed life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts worse, which it always is, by the way, every single thing we do comes down to what has more of a side effect that will hurt us, right? I always say everything from having that donut to having that child. There's always
Donut or a child? What's a perfect analogy? Yes.
There you go. Like the whole spectrum, the smallest decision to the most life-changing decision comes with the concept, what hurts versus what hurts worse. Because I'll tell you, I'm a parent to 5 children. I have 3 biological kids and 2 stepkids, and having children is excruciating. However, at least for me, not having them would be unthinkably excruciating. So yeah, it hurts to have children. It's like wearing your heart outside your body. It's the most painful thing to watch the world hurt them or affect them. But the love I have for them is so much greater than that. So it hurts worse to not have them. So I have them, right? That's what everything comes down to. So if indeed the nervous system perceives our repressed emotions to be a greater predator than the pain, what we need to do is have a systematic way to feel our repressed emotions. So what I've done is I've taken Sarno's work and I've evolved it. So the first thing to do, and this is basic Sarno, is make a list. Make 3 lists. Bulleted lists that don't have to mean anything to anyone but you. The first is childhood, or we can call it past stressors. The second is daily stressors. And the third is personality characteristics that may be causing stress in your life. Like I said, the perfectionistic, the goodist, you being your own worst critic, that kind of thing. The list could be anything from a light thing that happened, like I remember that time I was really embarrassed, I said the wrong thing and I'll never forget it, to stuff like serious abuse. I mean, it's just a bulleted list that you make and you just search your mind for everything you can think of that might be unresolved. And sometimes as you move through this process, there will be more things you want to add to the list. Don't let the list intimidate you. It doesn't mean you're going to have to get through everything on this list in order to feel well. Oftentimes, you don't have to do that at all, but it's really good. It's like I say, it's like Google mapping your life. You're going to pull back and you're going to look at everything and bullet it out. And then what I prescribe is something called a journal speak practice, where you take 20 minutes every day and you sit down and you peruse your list and you pick something. And I always say, if you were perusing your list and you say, oh God, not that one, that's the one you pick. You know, you go into the darkest heart of whatever it is. Yeah. And you put it on the top of a piece of paper, or I like to type, put it into a blank document that you're going to erase the moment you're done, by the way. This is just a practice. This is not a journaling thing that you're going to keep and reread. As one of my favorite clients says, it's like blowing your nose into a tissue. Are you going to hold on to it? Throw it away. This is just releasing toxins from our body. And you're going to journal on it. But the voice that you're going to invite is an angry, terrified, and grieving 5-year-old child. This is not time to be mature. This is not time to care for societal correctness and politeness. This is, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, I like to say cuss. You can cuss.
Okay, I can cuss. This is, I fucking hate you. You ruined my life and I'll never forgive you. Now, people so often say, well, isn't that counterintuitive? Aren't I going to be an angry person? This is the magic of journal speak. As you start to let that 5-year-old speak, who, by the way, has been speaking anyway, she's just been screaming through your back or through your head or through your stomach. That voice will speak no matter what. So it's like, how do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear it through your body and suffer in pain? Or do you want to hear it in this very unpleasant way where you have to come to terms with how you might feel about things that you do not want to think about? That memories you do not want to remember. And, some people say to me, well, what if I'm really, really traumatized? I say, well, then maybe you do need to do it with a therapist. This is not to say that every single person can do this alone, but many people can. And so essentially what happens is you do this 20-minute journal speak practice. And when you're done, I recommend a 10-minute loving kindness meditation. So all I'm asking is for 30 minutes of your day. And I know people find it hard to find time for themselves, but I am telling you, this 30-minute practice on a daily basis can so profoundly change your life in ways that it is absolutely hard to believe.
I bet.
Absolutely. But it's magical, because as the reservoir starts coming down, and as you, and by the way, what's wonderful about journal speak is it doesn't stay true. So you might start your journal speak maybe talking about your mother or, your bullying older sister or whoever you're talking about. And you might start with, I fucking hate you. You're this, you're that, you did this to me. I'll never forgive you. What starts to happen is the kid gets tired The kid screams herself out, and then she starts to feel compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. You start to grow up right there within yourself, and you start to feel the complexity that a child can't feel, and the gray area of like, yeah, I'm mad at my mother, but I do really see how she also never got a good parenting example. And I know I look back now that my anger and my rage and my sadness is out of me, and I can realize she really kind of was doing the best she could. It was kind of a terrible situation she was in. Things that you could never get access to when the anger and the rage and those more immature emotions are sitting on top of those awakenings. And so the awakenings start coming, and it might not be in one journal speak session, but it will come. If you make it a practice, the reservoir comes down, the symptoms stop firing. And then, and this is the best part, the pain or the symptom that brought you into this process becomes, what I like to say, the biggest, littlest part. It brought you in, but then the pain goes and you start realizing how many things you hadn't embraced about yourself that are making your world so much bigger and so much brighter, and the connections you're able to have with people and the way you're able to show up for yourself and for others. It is phenomenal what starts to happen. And then the last thing I'll say is you just have to live in patience and kindness for yourself, the third step. Because when you have to say these ugly things in your journal speak, sometimes it's tempting to be like, I'm a bad person, or, nice people don't talk that way. Or what if my grandmother heard me say that? You have to say, I always say, put your hand on your heart and say, I'm a human being. Everyone has these feelings. Everyone is afflicted. We are all trying our best. I am doing my very best with what I have right now. It's like, guys, life is too short not to do this for yourself. And one thing I do hear consistently is people are like, I can't believe I was holding that down. I didn't even know I felt that way. People say that to me a lot.
Yeah. Free writing, in essence, writing knowing you're going to get rid of it or not editing as you're going, seems to be a pretty powerful way to get in touch with these levels of unconsciousness in our body and give them a forum to be exercised out. And it's a kind of ritual, and it makes me think that adding another layer of ritual onto the getting rid of it, like, and not just throwing it away, but like burning it or like burying it. These things that deeper encode into your mind. It's like, I am releasing this. And by creating that ritual, it's really helping that sink in, because we're operating typically from these top level parts of our mind. Let's just call them the frontal parts of just that's a lot of us how we identify with consciousness and what it means to be alive. And there's this whole other depth layer of what it means to be us. It's been called many things over time, from unconscious to soul to heart, however you want to look at it. And it seems that we're just trying to create a more integrated system. Like, how do we communicate with this whole this whole building with many, many floors of our history and our traumas and everything all the other kinds of beliefs we've picked up along the way. And pain seems to be one way that it's speaking to us. Like, I hear you saying, in essence, it's a key to kind of doorways into your full self.
100%. I mean, it's staggering to watch what happens in ourselves when we set ourselves free like this. And free writing is another word for what I'm saying. The only reason that I feel like I put a heavier tone on it, because it has to be, you have to be intrepid with this. If you're a person who's looking to save your own life because you are, just fraught with chronic symptoms, and it's keeping you small and it's keeping you unable to live a life of full possibilities, then you have to be relentless with yourself. This is continuing to invite the truth, the deepest. And you're not going to get there in every session, but if your intention remains there, you will find your way. And I totally agree with you in terms of, a ritual releasing afterward. It's just that the reason I don't give too much energy to that is because I don't want to overwhelm people. If you live in a New York City apartment, you can't really burn it. Like most people, there's a lot of people that might say, oh, well, I can't do that part, so this isn't for me. Like, I just try to simplify it down to something that anyone can do, even sitting on the park on their phone. If they can type into their notes app and erase it, that's enough. I just want to make it accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine, are you finding that these days there's more pain, physical pain, because there's more stress and change and uncertainty in the world?
I would imagine, yes. But if you're looking at it from my seat, I see
You always see
so
the
much.
pain?
Exactly. I do. I do. I mean, for real.
Right.
Like I am doing this every day so passionately on, not only am I doing it actually, but I'm doing it on all my social media platforms. So I'm hearing from people constantly. So I don't know if there's enough capacity for me to see that it's risen, because that's how much already existed. But yes, I'm quite sure that this,
Yeah, that's the
you know,
compassion I put out there for myself and everyone, because I know I feel it and I can sense, I see the stress in my life. And so,
mhm.
one thing when I see that kind of stuff going on and the kind of fire we're stepping into as a society, is that the kind of things that can pop up from that. The game of whack-a-mole. If anything, it makes me inquisitive and to pay attention, to increase the self-talk of like, I can do this. Sort of like this heart-filled warrior energy, because it's like I have down days, I have up days, I have days where I feel strong, and I have days where I do not. And it's just like, wow, this is intense. The possibilities of where things can go here, but I don't want it to make me feel sick, right? I don't want
That's
my
right.
body to get afraid too and be like, holy shit, we need to distract. Like I don't want that. And so I think now is a particularly acute time for people to be staying engaged in this process as a form of holistic wellness, ongoing wellness, even if they
Yes.
don't have this like particular pain problem, right?
Yes. And I want to answer a question that you asked a few minutes ago that I did not answer. You said, is this also for sickness? Is this just, you said something like, is this just for pain, or is this also for
Like if someone has
sickness?
cancer, yes, versus they threw out their back, so to speak.
Yes. Before, cancer is an extreme example. So I'll take a minute before I talk about that. I want to talk about sickness first that is actually healable without something like, chemotherapy or something like that. So I have a client. Well, she's not really a client. She's just someone I helped. Who her name is Shoshana Bean, and she's a Broadway actress, and she was getting months and months and months of severe respiratory stuff. So like a throat infection, moving to a bronchitis, moving to an ear infection, sort of ENT stuff going on. And it was relentless. I mean, for months, at least 6 months, she wasn't well for one day. And she got an opportunity to go to New York and to star for 5 months on Broadway as the lead of a show. And she was going to be doing 8 shows a week for a 5-month run. And she was like, barely speak, much less sing. So through a mutual friend, she found my work, and she literally had 2 weeks. And I said to her, all right, girl, I said, if I can help you, but you need to listen to everything I'm telling you, because normally 2 weeks, I mean, I would never even postulate that somebody could get better that
There's
quickly.
no fast track.
No,
Yeah.
there is no fast track. There truly isn't. But if you are that desperate, and that determined to be well, and it was a big career thing that she, opportunity for her. So anyway, as it went, she was doing her journal speak 2 to 3 times a day. She was meditating. She was practicing. Basically, she became her project almost completely. And in the course of those 2 weeks, she became completely well. And that is just over a year ago. She has not been sick since. And she and I talk all the time, and she just is continually just overflowing with gratitude. But I guess what I'm saying, and she never missed a show in that 5-month run. She did 8 shows a week. So what I'm saying is, like, this is truly resets your immune system. So when you're talking about illness and COVID and all the things that are on top of mind right now, it's very well held by even the most scientific minds that the immune system is suppressed by stress. The immune system is suppressed by us not being able to feel our feelings, that thus being stressed out people, thus being overly fearful, and we get sick more easily. So this truly just plays into things that most people already believe. It's just taking it to a place where we hadn't imagined, and is incredibly real.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but I've read some things about the response of what sickness is to COVID being an overactive immune system. Like it's sort of an immune response in a way, but either way, the paradigm still fits.
Well, no, I can actually explain that to you a bit. What you get COVID or any virus by having a lowered immune system. The reason that COVID can kill you is once you get it by having had the lowered immune system, if your immune system comes in, as they say, like a bomb not a sniper. The idea of immune system, it's ideal if it comes in like a sniper. It takes out what it needs to take out and not everything around it. But unfortunately with COVID, one of the things that is happening in certain people is their immune system is coming in with a bomb and destroying everything around the virus as well as the virus. And that's when people are having severe lung disease and stuff like that. So it's more complicated than a usual illness, but it's still the genesis of getting any virus is that your immune system allows it in, which can be a severe result of stress.
Well, I think there's a lot to chew on here, and I really just wanted to introduce this idea to people and to further my own internal conversation about it, because it was really life-changing for me, and it still is an ongoing conversation with my own body as I see certain kinds of pain arise and how I work with it and how I watch it go away, and it's just been this very personal, private thing, but very profound in my life. Yeah. And so this was just a way for me to learn more and to bring that conversation out to the public a bit.
Did I answer all your questions? Are there any other questions that you have that I could answer?
Sure. I always have. We're kind of talking about the ineffable in a way, so it's sort of hard to. My brain, the top part of my brain that doubts, is the one that wants to nail it down with every possible doubt. But we could do that forever, and I think the biggest logical break in the head is sort of how we started. That sometimes, and I remember this outlined in the book. You have a particular accident, like you heard the pop in your back or something. Mm-hmm. Like it's like that. I bent over, I heard it. I obviously injured my back, and now I feel pain. It's very difficult for people to disconnect the idea that there could be other pathways for the pain, or that pain has a memory, its pathway, and that it has anything to do with what they think, for instance. And I know that's sort of, to me, that was step one, to even thinking that was possible. Just saying that's even possible. And I still struggle with that, but I can't deny that I don't have any other tools left to deal with the way pain comes up in my body. So the only one I have is essentially psychological, and it tends to work. I just have to have patience. And it's an ongoing process.
Let me ask you a question. Why is a pop necessarily a reason for pain?
Well, it's not. It's just evidence for people, I suppose.
It's a misguided. Cause. It's misguided. And this is, I'll say two things about it. The first is my knees, and this is since I was 8, and I have no idea why, because I don't have bad knees and I've never had pain, crack every time I bend. It's disgusting. Right. It sounds like every time I bend down. And I noticed so do my daughter, so maybe it's just a genetic component of however I'm constructed. But they've never caused me pain. But I'll tell you one thing. If I didn't know about this work and I leaned down and my knees made that sound and all of a sudden I felt pain, I would be certain that the sound was associated with pain. So that's the first thing I'll say, which is that yes, there is something ineffable about this. And there is, if you choose to have this be a day that you don't want to suffer anymore, you have to open yourself up to the mystery of it somehow. Like I said, not the best scientist at Harvard understands the human brain. No one claims to. And so it's such a mystery that to some extent it is that process. Having said that, you can pull a muscle. You can injure yourself. It just has to heal. So I'm not suggesting there's a cure for human pain. Sometimes you do hear a pop. Sometimes you bend in the wrong way and you pull something or tear something or something.
You whack your head.
Yeah, exactly. You get a bump on your head.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you 3 months later are still feeling the pain from that twist, that is when the nervous system has taken this up as a mind-body thing. And if you don't believe me, what I'm saying is use your body as your proof. Exactly, Krishna, as you have done. When you practice what I'm teaching, what Sarno taught, and you start getting better, well then what difference does it make? This is happening. This is happening for every human being that lives because nobody is immune to the pain of being human, of the beautiful pain of being alive. And it's So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, there are physical things that are potentially associated, but if you hurt yourself, you will heal. If you crack, it's not necessarily a reason for pain. And the whole thing needs to be bathed in a bit of mystery because that is what it is to be alive.
Yeah, because it is a mystery.
Yeah.
Perfect. How can folks dig deeper into your work? What's the best way to find you?
The best way to start is just to go to my website, which is thecureforchronicpain.com, or Google my name, Nicole Sachs. Everything comes up. I have a resources page on my website that links to my podcast, my YouTube channel. You can buy my book on Amazon. I have a closed community on Facebook, which is a private group where thousands of people are in conversation supporting each other doing this work. I'd say my podcast is a really great place to start just because it's a way to just sort of passively listen to this stuff and feel how it lands with you. And I also, I travel the country and I teach. Right now in the state of COVID, I no longer have any in-person retreats planned, but I am doing an online retreat September 18th through the 20th. I did one in June and it was phenomenal. Blew my mind that it could be so successful remotely, but we really had an amazing experience. So if people are looking to work with me directly, that's really the only way, because I no longer see private patients because I'm busy trying to bring this message to the global community.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put the website in the show notes, and thank you so much for giving us some time. It was great for me, and I'm sure other people will enjoy it too.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us on the show. It certainly was educational for me. I'm just glad I could share that ecosystem of thought with all of you. I hope you can take it and run with it, wherever it may lead you. This music that you're hearing in the background, Tiny Choices, and it's off the Karen album. Karen, Cairn album featuring Keith Sweaty. Keith Sweaty was the electronic producer. We co-produced that album together, and that track is called Tiny Choices. Listen, guys, I hope to see you at the ceremony on Saturday, the 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it at eastforest.org or youtube.com/eastforestmusic. If you want to join the East Forest Council before or after, please do. There's also info about joining that private Zoom gathering, also at eastforest.org. And the Born Eye track is coming out this Friday, July 17th, 2020. Man, is it crazy out there. My best advice for you is to just stay with it and honor the fact that you're a brave soul incarnating into a time that needs you. So keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do, do it with grace.
Bound